Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. My guest today has got to be one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard. Max Ceron is the executive director of the CWB Association in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. But it was a long, and winding road to get to this point. So Max and his family immigrated to Canada because of a political coup in Chile, where they're from. He found that his first love was cars at the age of 14 years old. Through his high school career, that love switched to music, then to robotics. So he found himself in school for computer science. Once he realized that wasn't going to take him where he wanted to go, he switched his major to philosophy, surely for the challenge. When he was surprised by the news that he was going to be a father, he knew he had to switch gears and do something that would support his family. This started Max's 28-year-long welding career. He spent 9 years with a fast-growing company, then eventually started his own company, which pivoted back to building cars, but this time for movie sets. When that came to a close, he went back to school to get his red seals in welding and fabrication and a blue seal in business. Then he got into management, developed a love for mentorship, became an instructor at Saskatchewan Polytechnic, and eventually the executive director at CWB. Listen in to hear how Max climbed the rope of life, as he would say, and let his intuition guide him to one opportunity after the next in the world of the skilled trades. Believe me, you don't want to miss this episode. So as always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to grow the show. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again, and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Max Ceron. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Got an awesome guest here today. I had the privilege and the honor of being on his show a few weeks back, and so I'm just really excited to talk to him. His name is Max, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to the audience. Max, why don't you tell us how you got to where you are today, who you are, all that good stuff, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh man, I'm happy to be here. We had lots of fun when I got to interview you, so I think this is going to be a good time. Man, that's a big question. I know I dropped that on you too, so it's a typical podcast form.
Yeah.
But who am I? My name is Max Sauron. I live in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. So I'm a Canadian fan, and I am initially from Chile. So my parents are Chilean. I was born in Mendoza, Argentina. There was a political coup in Chile in the 70s, and my parents were exiled from Chile. So I was born in Argentina in a town called Mendoza. And from there, we ended up in Canada. The way things played out from there were very much like the immigrant story. My dad was a miner and a welder down in Chile. And when we came to Canada, those skills translated into where we got placed in Canada, which is Saskatchewan, which is a heavy mining, oil and gas, agriculture, lots of industry here, with a low population. Plug for Saskatchewan if anyone wants to come make a lot of money. It's a good place to live. From there, kind of that's where it went. My dad got into welding here, got into the community. I was raised as your good little, Chilean Canadian. My parents were very socialist, very left-leaning people, which is how I was raised. Lots of volunteer work, lots of involvement with the community, lots of stuff like that. As I got older, I developed my own hobbies. I guess that kind of led me to where I am. A few of them are, I'm an adept reader. I love to read. I've always been heavy into reading. And I guess if you're a reader, generally you're into the arts somewhat. So I got into playing guitar. The mechanical side really didn't express itself until I got into cars. I bought my first car when I was 14. It was a 76 Mercury Capri Fastback, which I never even got to drive because I blew the engine playing around with it before I ever even got it on the road because I'm an idiot. So that was that. As I got into high school, I was good at school. Being a reader helps with school. So I did pretty good in school, but music really started to pull on me. And that was kind of my mission coming out of high school. I didn't really have much of a plan. I had my band. My band was doing pretty good. We were like a heavy metal band called Sonatic, and we were touring a bit and having lots of fun with that. It was a good, fun lifestyle for a kid, for a 19, 18-year-old kid. It was lots of fun. And I enrolled at the U of R, the University of Regina. I initially started off computer science major because I really felt like I wanted to be a robotic engineer. Like literally since I was like 5 years old, I had this idea like I'm gonna build robots, and these robots are gonna be so cool, like those dynamic, those cool robots that are online right now dancing and stuff. I wanted to build that stuff my whole life.
My mind goes immediately to the ones that flip burgers. I don't know why.
Exactly, or the ones
Flippy.
that bartend for you in Tokyo.
Right.
So I wanted to build a burger flipping bartending robot, and it was like my life's dream. And they don't have that program at the U of R in my little town in Saskatchewan, right? So I started off in computer science thinking I could do this, and man, it just sucked. And it wasn't the program, it was me. I got a big mouth, and I'm super social, and I like getting out there, and I like connections with people. I got a vibe for it. I can feel like connections being created. And I love to foster that feeling. And in the computer science world, that's just it's not a thing. Like you live in a cubicle and you work in a cubicle, and hindsight now living in a cubicle, but back then it was way different, right? And so I had taken Philosophy 100 just as a filler class because you need these like kind of whatever classes when you're in university. And of all the classes I took in my first year, even though I did really well in computer science, I did the worst in philosophy. Like I squeaked the pass, and that piqued my interest. Like it was like, man, this is hard. And I went and talked to the campus, and I was like, what's philosophy get you? And they were like, ha ha ha, it makes you a better person. And I was like, ha ha ha, I'm down with that. So I switched my major to philosophy, and I decided to go all in for philosophy, and that's what I ended up devoting my time for. And right until I was done, it was philosophy, and I studied Latin and classical studies. Once I was getting towards my end of university career, I still had my band, and I was still playing around, right? I met a girl, and she got pregnant. So this changes everything for future plans.
Yeah.
She was 18, I'm 20 years old, 21 I think, and having my first kid, my daughter Daniela, who's 23 this year. And she's like, what are you going to do with philosophy? Well, as we know, the trades will never let you down. They will never let you down, because it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. Things got to get built, and things got to get fixed. So I went back to welding, which I had never really left because, I was still kind of doing it on weekends and whatever for money. And that's when I started my full-on welding career, which ended up being, the next 27, 28 years of my life. Now that path in itself has been extremely winding and crazy. So I don't know if we want to do a part one, part two, Max's life, but I could just keep going here.
We'll see where this gets us, and then we'll make that determination. Part 4, okay. Part 5.
So I start welding. It ended up being one of the best experiences of my life because it was a startup company. So I got hired on as a laborer, not a welder, just a laborer. Just a kid to shovel dirt and move rocks, and for a small welding shop with 5 employees in an old Quonset. This company was called Superior Hard Chrome. They specialized in chromed equipment, so cylinders, shafts, plungers, anything that had to get machined and chromed. And I was just a laborer. I didn't really weld. Being a part of this company right from day one was maybe one of the best things that happened to me going forward, because the company succeeded. I was there almost 9 years, so a good chunk of my young life, and I got to be a part of a company starting off with like basically nothing other than an idea, and with good staff, good management, good people, good idea men, kind of a sense of fearlessness and gunslinging attitude, that we're just,
Bootstrapping. Yeah.
that's right. You're just you never say no. Customer walks in the door and you just, yeah, okay, we can figure it out later, just say yes. And through that, I started welding and then fabricating. Because of the nature of the business, I'm also learning machining, millwright, mechanics, hydraulics, kind of whatever it takes. And when I left the company 9 years later, it was at, I think, 70 employees and doing about 2 or 3 million a month. And that was an awesome opportunity. And I didn't leave the company on a bad note. I don't think I really ever have. It was just, I felt like I had reached my limit in that company, which since then I've never worked for a place 9 years. That's it's still my longest run, because you know it gave me that Wild West attitude where I wanted to come in, learn, kick ass, and milk it as much as I could. But I also felt like there was an end point that sometimes you can reach, not career wise necessarily, but in a space, and learning to identify when you're done in your space is good for everyone, right? Not just you, but also the people around you. Because, and I'm sure you've seen it too, when someone kind of hits their plateau, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it might be time for them to find a new cliff to climb. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that it just
could also
spot.
It could be a bad thing too. I mean, and not to say that your situation was or that anybody else's is, but it could be a bad thing. I mean, isn't that the ultimate demise of Genghis Khan? Didn't he just not know when to quit?
Yeah, but he never did. He ever find a plateau?
I suppose. Oh, look
Right?
at you, philosophy, asking the questions. Oh, you got me. Won't happen again, Max.
Right? Like, I mean, his was an endless climb, right? Like,
Yeah.
Although something like 90% of the planet has Genghis Khan's genetics in them, or something like that. But
Guy got around.
yeah, he was a busy man. So after I left Superior Hard Chrome, I went and worked for a couple shops here and there, just honing my skills, and that's when I took the plunge into starting my own business. So I was 27, just about 28 years old, and I started my first company called Cubed Productions, which we picked a very ambiguous term. Everyone was always like, "Are you in film productions?" It's like, no, we're in the sense of productions, as in we'll produce whatever the heck you bring to us. Like we don't really have a plan. I had my certain skills. I hired a mechanic. I hired a front end guy to do books, and I just kind of wanted to take on whatever. Now that whatever got really pigeonholed quickly because of one of my other passions that all of a sudden made a comeback, which was vehicles. As soon as I opened up the shop, I had a couple people come in and say, "Hey, you do custom anything. Would you do work on these custom cars?" And when I talk in custom cars, I mean cars that are not street legal. Lots of shops, mechanic shops, won't touch vehicles that are not street legal because they could be, insurance reasons they can get in trouble. Well, when you're a production shop and you're not a mechanic shop, I don't have those regulations. Go ahead and break the law. I don't care. I'll tell you that it's not legal, and it's on you if you drive it on the road and get caught. That's not my problem. So we did a couple cars, and then we did a couple more. And then our local sports team, the Rough Riders, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, which are world famous. You should, if you haven't heard of the Saskatchewan Rough Riders in the CFL, then you got to watch. Huge fan base. They're like our biggest selling franchise in North America.
Oh, really?
In Canada, yeah, they're huge. I think they're third behind like the Toronto Maple Leafs for hockey. It's huge. So a couple of the sports guys, because they make good money, started bringing their cars, right, to get these like fancy whips. Completely on the side, this is right when Pimp My Ride gets released on MTV. And you know what? There's nothing better than free advertising. So all of a sudden, I'm just building cars. Next thing you know, a movie approaches me, a production company asking me if I would build some cars for a movie. Yeah, you know what? That sounds like fun. And then for the next couple of years, we built cars for movie sets and got to do a bunch of car work on cars, major releases and movies, 3 or 4 movies, which is about 2 years of work. And that was a lot of fun. At that point, I was traveling like crazy, doing this work all over the place. My marriage is finito. So I decided to do a clean cut on everything. Divorce, the business, I'm going to go back to private industry and just work for somebody and just make a steady paycheck. Because running a business is like a 16 to 20 hour a day job. Like there's just no stopping, right? There's 100 things on your mind all the time.
You guys listening out there, because there's a lot of truth to that.
Oh, there's no breaks. Like, I mean, you're hanging out with your friends having drinks and you're thinking about work. Like it's just always on your mind. And I decided to go back to private industry, which was good for me, because that's when I really started to like re-educate myself into management and into the business side of things. I had started a business kind of blindly and stumbled my way through it, because if you got skill, you can always monetize skill. That's just a thing, right? It's just a reality. But running a business properly is its own flow, right? So I went and got some education. I got some proper certification. I became a welding red seal. I became a fabricated red seal, which is a red seal endorsement. It's an international standard. And then I got my blue seal, which was in business. And then at that point, I ended up getting hired by one of the largest manufacturing companies in Canada, Brant Industries. And there's Brant in the US. They do agricultural equipment. They were looking to get into the oil and gas, mining, lumber, like specialized equipment field. And they had historically only ever been agriculture. I had worked oil and gas and mining almost my entire life up until that point. So they hired me on again in a fledgling startup group inside the larger corporation with only like 5 of us to try to get this thing off the ground to see if they can crack that market.
Man, what is it with you and startups? It's like moths to a flame, dude.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I haven't applied for a job in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I work, and then people come because they want me to do what I did in that place and replicate it where they are.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of ended up being my skill that I have now to this day. And even now with the new job I just started a week ago, I'm on day 5 of my new job. It's something that I get hired for now above my welding skill and above. It's just my ability to come in and just with unbiased, you know, interpretation, look at a situation and try to figure out what could be better and what's worse, what's good and what's bad. And I honestly think that a good part of that ability comes from my philosophy background, removing myself from the equation. And if I'm the problem, you know, being able to recognize that, which is huge in any type of business. Like, if you can criticize your staff all day, but man, you got to look at yourself and criticize yourself. There's no way you're doing your job 100%. No way.
Right.
There's something you could improve and something you may need to abandon, really. Like, sometimes that happens. And I worked for Brant for 7 years, and then the college came coming because I did some work at the college through Brant in terms of developing some stuff. The college came and said, hey, we got a welding program, but it's kind of running loose and we're losing money out the sides and colleges get very little funding. Do you think you could help, you know, organize a college into like a business so it runs like a business model, nice and lean? And I was like, yeah, man, let's go for it. So I got hired at college, leaned that out. Now it's our college got granted the best welding college in Canada. We produced the 9th best welding student in the world at Kazan last year at the skills competition. So he was a mentor, one of my mentorees, Adam Sebastian, and nothing but success there. Started a new manufacturing program, which was the first of its kind in Canada, tailoring specifically to producing people like you and I, that you are multi-skilled, multifaceted, and willing to look at manufacturing and business from not just a dollars and cents point of view, but also in terms of managing people, skills, environment, all these other soft, you know, narratives that exist in industry. Did that for 7 years, just left there in December, got hired at the Canadian Welding Bureau. I am now the director of the Canadian Welding Bureau Association, so I'm in charge of dealing with the welding community across the entire country of Canada now, from coast to coast to coast. And that's where I am today.
Wow. Okay. The end. No, I'm just kidding. That's wild, man. That's quite the journey.
You know, for an immigrant with a welder dad, and everyone's like, you know, there's so much that's like, you're not going to, like, a welder trades thing. What are you going to do? Everyone thinks of the trade family, the trade dad, trade mom, trade kids. You're living in the garage or the trailer park with your 3 broken cars. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But man, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
right? Like really, the sky's the limit.
Well, and this is a perfect example. You know, this is a lot of what I talk about is people don't have an opportunity to peek behind the veil, you know, of the skilled trades, and it's not just in the welding industry. Obviously, it's across the entire industry. People just don't know what it is, what it can lead to, where it can take you. You know, they have this image in their mind, this perception that has been generated from whatever, or who knows what, you know, that it's just like a plumber, for instance, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks that you're just going to fix 50,000 toilets and then you die, you know, and that's and that's not true. But, you know, I mean, that's the common perception of, well, I don't want to be a plumber because I don't want to fix toilets. I don't want to.
And you better fix them properly, or else you're a bad plumber. You know, like,
Right, exactly. But there's just so much more to these industries, and your stories, you know, it just paints that picture perfectly, which is great. I find it very, very interesting that, you know, the first job that you had was in that startup. I mean, the lessons that you've learned there, I'm sure, are just completely invaluable to, you know, everything that you've done since. It's that's a perfect environment to set the stage for success. You know, being around that type of atmosphere and those types of people in this particular industry. You know, it sounds like it was a heck of a ride.
well, you know, it's super interesting. The owner of Superior Hardchrome, when I got hired there, you ever heard of Amway?
Yeah.
So Amway like sells like paper products and toiletries and cleaning supplies, and they're like a pyramid marketing scheme. Like what are they called now? The fancy term for them, LMMs or something like that. Multi-level marketing.
Yes. Yeah. MLMs. Yeah. My
MLMs. So Amway is an MLM, and this guy named Al Lenius got big in the Amway world. Okay, so he's like the ultimate vacuum salesman, basically. He's killing it in the selling toilet paper and Windex market. He decides one day that he realized that there's no medium sized companies to fill a gap of equipment that's breaking down. During his travels of marketing and selling, he realizes that all these equipment pieces are broken and no one's fixing them. And he starts asking these people, like, why are you not using that machinery? Well, there's no company that'll fix it. That big company's too big and that company's too small. And so Al Lenius decides to open up a welding repair shop specializing in chrome solutions. And he has no knowledge whatsoever about this industry. He's got some money. He works like a son of a bugger. And he's got lots of sales ability, but he hired the right people, and that was so key. It took him like 4 or 5 tries to find the right shop manager, because he would bring someone in, didn't matter the skills. If they didn't fit right, like vibe, they were gone. And he was not scared to pull that trigger. And I've always remembered that, like that vibe, that synergy between people is so important to watch for.
Oh yeah, no, it shouldn't be discounted, because, and we see it here too. You know, in my business, it's very much the same. You know, and it's not, you know, it's not to put anybody down or anybody out. It's just, you know, some personalities just don't clash with each other. You know, and in the organization, that's just so important. It as my dad would say, right? You got to kiss a lot of frogs, and it's just it's one of those things. But it's in businesses like that and startups like that, that's the only thing that's really going to make it go, because you could have the smartest people in the world, but even if they all agree on where to go and disagree so much on how to get there, it's not going to work, you know. And so you've got to go through that, and you had a front row seat, it sounds like, you know, which is fantastic. And was that the inspiration for you starting your own business after that? Did you see that and say, I could do this?
I don't know if I saw it from them at that point. It was towards the end of my 9 years at that company when I started feeling like I needed to burst out of some type of a shell. Like I was starting to be unhappy with a job. I was starting to be unhappy with the work, unhappy with the personalities around me. And for a little bit, I was starting to blame, which is it's a rookie mistake, right? you start to blame like, oh, that guy or that place or this job. And like, I mean, I can't stress to young people coming up, like, don't ever blame anyone for any of your problems. Like, you are in control of your life, your brain, your emotions. Uh, on a philosophical point, we only interact with reality how we choose to,
Hmm.
right? So if you are feeling those feelings, it's you. It's not them. You can disappear from that situation and they'll be fine, you know. And that's what it was to me. And so I had to sit and think about, like, okay, well, what am I going to do then? Like, am I just going to go to somewhere else and just transplant this bean to a new pot in the same garden, or am I going to transplant this bean into an avocado field and see what happens? And that's kind of what I decided, is like, I'm just gonna strike it out. I got a couple young kids at that time. I had two kids already, and I was like, I got a couple young kids. I'm still young. I got lots of energy because I've always had a ton of energy. It's just a thing for me. I'm hyper, and I'm gonna try to start a business. Like, I mean, I looked at the ownership there, and I was like, they did it. Why can't I do that? Let me find that niche like they found that niche.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then where that led was unique as well, building cars for movies. I mean, you couldn't have predicted that, right? I mean, you couldn't have said, well, this is what I'm going to try to do. That just kind of fell on you.
Well, dude, like, I have had zero plan. Like, I get asked that question all the time, like, especially in the college from students when they'll follow my Instagram and see the things that I've done, and like, I've done some crazy things, and they're like, "Wow, how did you get there?" And I don't know. Like, I have some very basic precepts to life, like, stay healthy because you can't do anything if you're sick, you know, work your ass off. Like, I mean, like, not just like a little bit, but like hard.
Yeah.
Like you gotta, like, really, what are all the things you appreciate in life? Every single thing that you appreciate as a spectator is appreciating people that try their hardest. It doesn't matter if you're watching sports or on your computer or at work or driving your car. Every single thing, every single detail in your life that you respect is the product of someone else trying their hardest.
Yeah.
So if you want you to get respected, it's only going to be if you try your hardest, right? So that's basically it. I wake up, I give her, and I try to do the best job I can. I try to I try to fuel people because I feel like, that's one of my knacks, is that I can give people energy, like, just hype people up and, like, let's do this and let's go. And even if the sink ship, like, the boat's sinking, and you can still take pieces of that boat and build a new boat real quick before it's gone, like
That's wild, man. More people should think like you. Um, but there's a lot of truth to that. And I'm a big proponent for making yourself uncomfortable, and because the hard work I've found, there's a lot of people that it's always easier just to not push yourself, right? I mean, that's the easy way to do things. And I think that some people can kind of get caught into that trap, which is one of the reasons why I love the skilled trades, right? Because in order to advance, in order to do anything, in order to get raises, in order to move anywhere in a company or in your own business, you have to put forth that effort. And sometimes, man, it hurts. Sometimes it hurts a lot, and you have to be uncomfortable. I mean, just like when you go to the gym, right? You're not gonna get bigger unless you're
sore.
You're sore. Yeah. That's it. And that's so true out of life and the trades. And I often say, especially in my book, I go through this. There's a lot of people that talk about having the right characteristics and the right skill set to be in the trades, but nobody talks about the skill sets and the characteristics that the trades build themselves. So if you go in there as a clean slate, right, as a blank canvas, then the trades have the ability to shape you and mold you for success, no matter if you stay in the trades or you don't. Because of that hard work, that perseverance, that tenacity, that personal responsibility and accountability, the things that you can't avoid when you're in this industry. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really started getting the grasp of what you're saying in a bigger scope when I started having to hire people.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was for me a game changer when I moved up enough in this up the rope of life that I had to now look at someone else who's a stranger and try to make the call about whether they have that tenacity or go getter, like those skills that aren't on the resume. Like like how do you quantify that, right? And I'm trying to hire. No, something that I've realized is that I do actually care quite a bit about people's personal lives on resumes. Like, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but you know how your whole life you're like education, education, job one, job two, job three, job four, hobbies, knitting, running. Like, I mean, like very little information, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I would rather have a longer list of what you do in your spare time because if you're a rock star outside of work, odds are you're probably going to be a rock star inside of work. And if you are like not full of energy and full of all this stuff outside of work, why would I expect you to suddenly turn it on when you get here? Because I'm offering you money? Not really. Like, money's not a good negotiator. At the end of the day, it's not what's going to really motivate you for a long time. So what's the soft skills? How do you quantify that? And that's tricky.
Wow, yeah, that is tricky, and that's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that. But it makes a whole lot of sense. Out of curiosity, how many employees did you get up to?
In my company, I had 7.
Okay,
That's as big as I got before I sold it. And then
you're lucky, bro.
since then I've only had to manage, so I'm only hiring for other people.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely. I've always said that's the hardest part of business. I can do just about anything and everything in business. I can learn easily, I can execute easily. It's the managing of people that's difficult, but I love the challenge. But that is the most difficult part of the job. We're up to almost 50 employees now. And every single day I learn something from everybody that I talk to. And you have to, because you're really forced to, if you want them to be a part of the company, because you have to relate to them, you have to know how they define success. That's a big thing that I talk about, and so it's the connecting, but it's a lot of trial and error, right? You can't just assume that everybody's just like you. That doesn't
and
work.
You wouldn't want that either, right?
No, of course. And that's the other thing too, is that yeah, you have to create an atmosphere, I think, in a growing business that inspires healthy conflict. I've tried to do that with my leadership team. I don't want everybody looking at me saying, okay, what do we do next? I want people respectfully fighting over it, because that's how you get to answers quickly and efficiently, as long as everybody is doing it in a respectful way, which is a whole nother challenge in itself, but that's where the culture comes in and everything else. So, but yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. And I know we're kind of going down rabbit holes. This happens on my podcast. We start talking about one thing and then we end up.
You're my last meeting of the day, man. I got all night. I can get a bottle of scotch if we need to. Like,
man, that sounds good. No, so I'm gonna actually jump around a little bit here. I usually do this a little bit more organized, but I was so excited to talk to you, and I'm hearing you talk, and I'm like, oh, I gotta ask about that. Oh, I gotta ask about that. So, you said you found your love of cars at 14 years old when you bought that car. When you were in high school and going through that, I know you said you were super interested in music, but did you want to pursue that music as a career? Was that your goal out of high school?
Like I said, I don't have any long-term plans. I just tend to try to maximize whatever I'm doing to its end limit. So when I was in music with my band, yes, it was all that I was focused on. And there's so many good musicians. Like I'm sure you can go to any club in any town during non-COVID times and see amazing musicians playing all over town, and you think to yourself, how are these guys not famous, or how is that person not found, or they're better than what I hear on the radio. And what it is that it's a business. It's the business, right? And they don't have the business skills. Like, they have all the talent in the world, but they can't get themselves out there. I was on the other end. We were a medium to okay band, but I was in it. So I was like making demos and raising money and organizing, functions, and getting us out there and sending demo tapes across the country, and getting us put on bills. And so we actually did really well for the level of skill we were at. And I mean, I was probably the worst in the band technically as a musician. The drummer and the other guitarist, the bassist, they've all gone on to do great in music, except for me. I went on to be a welder, right? Like, but it wasn't for lack of trying, right? It was my thing. Like, I just went into it, and when I'm focused on something and zone in on something, skill is secondary, because I'm just going to try to smash it, right? I'm just going to try to get to the end of wherever this road gets to. It's like, there's an old saying: if you don't know your destination, any road will get you there, right? So like, if you don't know where you're going, you just give her, and you'll get somewhere, right?
Yep. Or you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You know, that kind of thing. Absolutely, and it's definitely true. And I was also really excited to hear of your love for robots, because when I was a kid, I had that same intrigue, right? I would always get like the erector sets and the things like that.
I had erector and mechano as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I would always want the newest one, because there was some AI, AI back in the early 90s was like, the arm moves up,
one servo and a resistor.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I was so intrigued by it. Like, that's, for a minute there, that's what I wanted to do also. But that never manifested in anything. I'm still super intrigued every time I scroll past like a robot or something on LinkedIn. I've got to stop and watch the video. That's how I know about Flippy the robot, and
have you ever tried to build one?
I haven't. No.
I built one for my grade 8 science project.
Did you?
With my VIC 20. That's how old I am. I'm 45. So I had a VIC 20, and I built the whole thing. And what it could do is that you could give it coordinates, and then it had 3 wheels and a pencil that you could screw into it. And if you gave it coordinates, it would draw shapes. Like, it would like, so you can make it do a square or a triangle or a circle. And I won my my science fair with that.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Oh man, that's awesome. So
to Trent Fleece, wherever you are, he was the smartest kid in my school. Take that.
How do you like me now? That's awesome. All right, so we're gonna jump forward a little bit from there then. Okay. So after your business, and you ended up closing that business, is that right? Mm-hmm. Close that business, and then you got into, that's when you started getting your seals, right, for welding, and then yep. Blue for business. At the time, what was your okay? I'm not gonna make this mistake a third time. I know you don't have plans. I get it. But I mean, what was your intent? Was it just to hone in on those skills, or did you know that you wanted to do something with those seals at some point? You just didn't know what?
I wanted to get into management. Okay. I wanted to get off the floor. That was where I was going. That was my intent. I got hired at Brandt at that point, and like, I mean, I did. When I talk about these jumps, these are major blocks in time. Sure. There was in between times where I was working at the mines, or I was working for this company or that company, just in betweens. But Brandt was a big one for me. They supported me in a lot of ways in my quest, because they hired me on in a fairly elevated role without any of the certification that should have been there. There was a lot of trust on their end from my history, my working relationships, because you're in an industry long enough and in a certain area, people knew me, they came, they hired me, they headhunted me. But right from day one, I had a lack of certification. So they made it clear to me that they would like me to climb the ladder. And I literally just talked about this with my boss today. I hate the term climbing a ladder, because climbing a ladder is too easy, right? Like, it's like a rung and then you climb. So the analogy I've been trying to switch to is climbing a rope, and every foot that you climb of that rope, you put the rope underneath you in your backpack. So as you climb the rope, the backpack gets heavier, right? So as I started to climb that rope, I realized that number one, I needed support because getting into management and moving up it's really an old boys club. There's a lot of that in industry, and it's something that really turns people off of industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to break through that barrier, and I broke through it like a bull in a china shop. But some people don't have that knack, right? And so I got into it in the spirit of getting into a management position and then hoping to mentor, right? Because from a management position, then I can start helping with the hiring, I can start helping with the decision making and creating work environments that are efficient and clean and good, but also inclusive and fun and like these make work somewhere that you like to go to, like you're like proud of it, because those are the workplaces that really succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Have you always had that that want to mentor, to teach, to instill wisdom?
I think I have. I think I've been like that. And I think when I was a kid, it was really annoying to everyone around me.
Why is this 14-year-old telling me all about life?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of that. Like, I mean, I remember being a little kid and all the kids running around screaming, and I was like reading Plato, and like, I mean, that's not normal, man. Like there's something wrong with that kid. It was ADD or something, but it is something I think I've always wanted to do. I feel like from an early age, from my parents, I knew we had a story, like coming from a war, exiled refugees, hammering it out in a new country. My parents are successful right from the beginning. They worked their way through whatever they needed to do. And I felt like, I got to hold up my end of the bargain, kind of, like I'm not going to let and this is maybe sounds really outdated way of thinking, but I didn't want the family line to suffer from me. I wanted to take the work my parents had invested in life in general as a bubble and run with it, and create those opportunities for me, my family, and people like me.
Yeah.
That the trades are like nothing else in terms of opening windows for people, accessibility. You don't need to spend $100,000 on a university education to get a crappy job and start climbing the rope. You can literally just get out of bed and decide you're going to work hard, not be late, and do what you got to do, and you can start tomorrow. Like it's anybody, right? And that's the message that I feel like as I got through my teens, into my 20s, with my kids, my family, and then moving into management. It's like, this is the message that people need to start seeing. Like, I mean, you can get into this and not just be okay. You can get into this and be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love the most about the podcast and the different people I get to talk to, because you get to hear all of these different experiences of where they came from and how they ended up getting into this industry. A lot of them arrived in the trades by accident. They didn't realize that they were headed down this path, and then they saw all the opportunities that opened for them, all the doors and windows and whatever. But no one ever really realizes. A lot of the people I talk to, they don't realize what the industry can do for them, and above and beyond that, they're never told. At least the ones that I've talked to, and I think you're guest number 83, something like that. But that's a common trend. Like, I talked to a guy in Calgary, Bob Baker of Baker's Plumbing, and he was told in high school, point blank to his face, "You're too smart to be a plumber. Don't be a plumber. You're too smart." And he listened, and he went. Actually, I think he went for computer science, just like you did.
Yeah.
And then he got tired of it and said, "Screw this," and started doing plumbing, and now he's got an extremely successful plumbing company, and he's happy. and at the end of the day, what else is there? I mean, you gotta think of quality of life too, but it just seems like it's disregarded in a lot of the current education systems. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Like right now, with the company I'm working for with CWB, one of our directives is to get funding out to secondary and post-secondary schools, which I'm super pumped to try to do. Like I'm going to try to get in the ear of these colleges and schools to say, hey, there's money for people that are interested in getting into welding. Like you could possibly get all your schooling paid for free if you decide to go into these trades, because there's money in trades at all levels, right? Lots of it. Um, but what I'm learning really quickly, and I think I kind of always knew, but didn't really see it until I'm in it now, is that the message has been going out for a long time, but it gets shut down by the schools themselves,
Yeah.
right? It gets like, so your guidance counselor in grade 12, he gets those emails and faxes and whatever's invitations and saying, these are the bursaries, these are the scholarships, these are the opportunities. Just like all the other ones come from the colleges and whatever, all the programs, engineering, social work, everything, all these come into the guidance counselor, and they're actively partitioning out the trades and not even presenting these options to the students. And that is such a disservice.
Why?
Considering, and that's what I don't know. That's something I got to figure out. And man, this is now my job, and I'm gonna hone in like a hungry great white.
Ooh, oh boy.
And I'm gonna figure this out, because it shouldn't be that way. Because I bet half those parents of those kids are in the trades.
Yeah.
So like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah, it's always been puzzling to me, right? Because and I've heard a lot of different theories and things, but I don't know. I'm not a guidance counselor, I don't know a ton of people in the education system, but I've heard that there's different ways to rank school districts and stuff like that, and one of those ways might be how many kids go off to university, or college or whatever. Now, I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but my guess is you're probably going to find out. They don't know what they've gotten themselves into, No, but that's always just been intriguing to me, because I think I don't remember if I mentioned this on your podcast or not, but it wasn't, to me, the school system, it wasn't like anybody was really out there bashing the trades, except for that example with Bob that I told you about.
With Bob, yeah.
But other than that, like when I was in high school, it's not like somebody looked at me and said, don't go into the trades. Don't be a technician. Don't do any of this. That's stupid. Don't be stupid. Nobody said that. It was just ignored. It was just overlooked. It was like it wasn't even an option, and so that's what resonated with me the most, when I was asking my dad what he did for a living, and I had no idea. He was like, don't they teach you any of this in school? Like, no, I barely learned how to balance a checkbook. I mean,
yeah.
And then his next question was, well, did you go to class? And I refused to answer. But but it's true. It's so overlooked, and that's the main reason for the podcast and the book and everything else.
And do you think maybe it's a level of underrepresentation? Like, it's like, okay, like you said, like maybe they're not bashing it, but the trades are an apple, and university's a double glazed donut with sprinkles. Well, okay, like, I mean, which one am I going to go for? Like it's
now or in high school?
Well, I think it's the same answer.
Don't kid yourself, Josh.
Yeah, what are you talking about? But you know what I mean? Like, so like you're saying, maybe it's not so much of a don't do this, but hey, there's something that's better.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, and for people that do both, like I did both. I'm not going to ever diss university. It was useful to me. But it's not what I do for a living. Right. It's and like so many people that I know that went to university, it's not what they do for a living. It was a heavy investment into something that was, ended up being not their career. And colleges, technical colleges, polytechnics, the schools that trade schools that teach the trades, number one, they're way less money. It's less of an investment money wise. You get to make money. Usually there's programs, cooperative programs or programs where you make money while you go to school, and you come out of school with a job. Like, I just don't see how it's not it's almost like you should tell every child to go into the trades, for a couple years out of high school to make some money. And if you don't like it, go to university.
Yeah,
Like kind of
there you go.
flip the agenda,
Flip
you
the
know?
script a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. And I've always said it's all about the ROI. It's all about, how you personally define success. And I'm not trying to sway or persuade anybody from going to college or university if that's what you want to do. All I'm trying to do is say, if you don't know, like 90% of the people out there, when they're in high school, ask the question, right? As a philosophy major, you got to appreciate that. Just ask the question, but right now they're not even being taught what to ask. Like they don't even know to ask the question. I didn't know to ask the question,
Yeah, and it's not intuitive. It's not something
Right.
that's just going to come to you, right?
Yeah. So that's super interesting. So, all right, getting back to that was another rabbit hole, I think, but that's fine. So after Brant Industries, that's when you got into the college, right? And you started to lean out the college. You spent 7 years there. Were you involved even more so in that element with mentoring and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's when I really felt like I was starting to hit my stride personally. I was kind of like, I mean, now it's coming full circle where like you go to university to be a teacher, you abandon that path to become a welder, you climb up the welding rope of life, and I'm sticking to it, man. And I get to climb my welding rope of life, hand over fist, getting to the top or whatever it is, and now I'm back into college, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm in a capacity to not only try to, well, there's a few angles to it. Number one, you try to produce good students. They're a product, right? They're like, you go to school, and for all the mushy mushes out there, we can like, try to declassify the students as, human beings. But at the end of the day, a college is a enterprise, and its product is good students, right? You don't go to school to come out a bad student. Like, you
Right.
don't spend $100,000 to be bad at what you do. Like you want to be good at it, and that's the operative or the MO for the college. So for me, that was very foremost year one, getting hired, what I wanted to do, because I felt it was the start. Like, this is where you should start for me as a new person at the college. Okay, I'm going to be a welding instructor. I'm not going to get too deep into anything. I got a couple silos off the side of my desk about leaning the shop and organizing things, but I still have a full contingent of students in front of me that I want to create good welders. So I wanted to really try to like learn about that. So I went back to college. I started taking night classes, doing adult education courses at University of Fraser Valley. So it's an online university, and trying to get the knowledge of what adult education is, because I didn't want to like just be all ego and be like, I'm the best welder, so I'm just going to produce awesome welders, because that's just not how the world works, right?
Mhm.
I needed to kind of learn how to teach properly and not teach like how my dad taught, like yelling at me. Like, you can't just do that. You can't just yell all the time.
Figure it out.
Yeah, like, what are you, stupid? No, like, you can't do that in school, right? Not when someone's paying you. So it's like, okay, learn how to do that. And honestly, like I probably wasn't that good at it at the beginning, but I'm good with relationships. So the students would bond. You bond with the students. You show them your career, and this is something that I feel is important. And I'm actually quite serious about that in terms of we can talk about wages later, but I feel like people should know what jobs are. It shouldn't be a secret. There shouldn't be secrets when it comes to industry. So you just explain to them, like, this were the parts of my job, this is what I did, and this is what sucked, and this is what was good, and this is what was hard, and this is what wasn't. Because I'm not going to just tell you it was all awesome and I made a ton of money and everyone's happy. There was like dark days and hard times, and you have to find a way to crawl through it with a mouthful of dirt. That's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
A lot. So be ready. I'm not going to lie to you. And at the end of this, yes, you will have these awesome things, but you got to be prepared for those. And I think the students appreciate that honesty, right?
Yeah.
From there, with students, I started trying to develop my mentorship skills, where I was like, okay, outside of them just coming through my class and finishing, will they come back and ask me for help later, which is a sign of a mentor. Because you can't force mentorship. Like, you could pretend you're a mentor, but if no one's calling you, you're not a mentor. Like, like, what are you a mentor to? The wall? Like, if Facebook doesn't count, like, so like, if you're a mentor, if you're a true mentor or in a mentorship position, people are coming to you for help without you offering. It's something that you got to be prepared to do. And I put myself in that situation where I wanted to. And I saw that starting to happen where students, and now, 7 years later, I have students from my first year that are still on the cycle once a year, come visit me, talk to me, buy me a coffee, tell me what they're doing in their careers because I love to know, you know, and I like following them through their paths and trying to help them as much as I can and however I can.
Yeah.
That worked really well. I really enjoyed that part of teaching, but I feel like by the third or fourth year of doing teaching, I was starting to get a little bit starved for initiative because teaching is its own window and it's not a huge one, right? It's like you could be a grade 12 teacher for 40 years.
Yeah.
And grade 12 doesn't change a lot. It might be a new book every third year, new curriculum every 5 years. But at the end of the day, you're teaching grade 12. And I started to get that feeling where I'm teaching level threes. I started with level ones, and in Canada, we have a 3-year program for welding. So I got to level threes by my third year, where I was now doing final year, which is what I found the funnest, to work with them before they finished their hardest level. And that was fun, but I was starting to be like, it's getting kind of dry. And I remember talking to my boss, who was awesome, Doug. He's a good boss. And he said, well, let's see what other projects we can come up with. And that's when we started talking to the machine shop and the dean, and things started moving. And that's when we started getting the ideas to start developing a new program. And that was the next part of my college experience, was developing a new curriculum, new program for an industry, which was super challenging, but lots and lots of fun.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it. I mean, maybe not as fun as building cars for movies, but that's just me. I don't know. That does though.
But you're the guy that would jump out of those cars, and you know how movie cars are.
Oh yeah,
right? They're weird. You'll have like 40 cars for one scene, yeah. And one's got no back seat, one's got only tires on one side. Like they're all.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's really cool. So I can't believe we've already almost been talking for an hour, and we're gonna have to wrap it up soon. But I do have.
Oh really? Sorry.
Yeah. No. I an hour 15, something like that. It's usually what I try to keep it to. But I'm going to ask my last question to you, but be as detailed as you want in it. And I love to ask this to everybody. As you know, I talk a lot about, finding your definition of success and the path to living that definition of success. So I'm curious for you, Max, what is your definition of success, and how has your journey enabled that success for you?
Okay. Tough question.
Good. I love when people say that.
I think that first you have to define what passion is. I feel like passion is misrepresented a lot. I hear a lot of people throughout my life have said they need to find their passion and then succeed, like as if that's the path. Like you're going to be sitting at Walmart and your passion's going to hit you in the face, and you're going to go home and be like, this is what I'm going to sign up for, and done. I feel like your passion is impossible to find until you have some wisdom. So wisdom, the definition of wisdom is experience plus knowledge. So you need knowledge, but you need experience. Wisdom does not arise in a vacuum, and you're not going to make any wise decisions until you're wise, right? So you can have knowledge, but then your experience level is not there, or you can have the experience and your knowledge level is not there. When they start to mesh, that's when you start making really good decisions. Your passion arises the same way. You're going to try a few things, and trust me, your passions have been there since you were a baby. You have to be honest with yourself and look at the things that have brought you joy in your life. It doesn't matter how freaking weird they are. But it's not as simple as saying, like, I liked crayons, I'm going to be an artist. It's not that simple. You need to be like, I loved crayons. Now, what things that I've done can become a tool for me to express that love of crayons ongoing? Maybe I'll work at the crayon factory as a robot technician building machines that make crayons. Like, I mean, you got to start really thinking about that. And you're not going to get that until you start getting your toes wet in some work. So you're going to do stuff that you may not like. You're going to have to try to be fearless and experiment with your own life as to what you try. I've taken a number of career paths now to find what my passion was, and my passion has changed. My passions have evolved. They're not static. Nothing is static. We're a roving energy of mass floating through the solar system. So don't expect anything to ever stay the same from one second to the next. We change our entire body cells every 3 months or something. Like, you're not even the same human between haircuts. So like, don't even think about that. So that's number one. Be willing to accept that your passions are going to change and that they take time to figure out. Number two, once you find a path that you're on, let it exhaust itself, because that is a success in itself. So you start with something and you follow it through until you know you either like it or you don't. Don't abandon it, because you're not going to get the lesson out of it that it's trying to teach you. So either I like this and I'm going to keep going with it, or I don't like it, but stay with it until you know why you don't like it. Because if you don't figure out why you don't like it, you're bound to repeat that mistake again and find yourself in the same career position where you don't like it again. So don't do that to yourself. Let yourself stay in something. You're going to be uncomfortable. It may not be fun, but figure out what it is. Like, what is it around me that's making me unhappy? And if it's truly something that's not compatible, bounce. Fine, get the hell out of there. But now you know. And then when you go to the next job and you see that thing, you could be open and honest about it, be like, hey, yo, that doesn't work for me. So don't let that be an obstacle. You don't have to quit, but I can navigate it around, I can start working on that. At the end of the day, when are you successful? Success is a daily thing. You add successes together. An Olympic runner doesn't get a gold medal on his first day of running and he wins. He's got 17 years of medals, and that's the most important one, right? So you build your successes daily, weekly goals, work through them. If you feel you're not doing well, then count that a loss. But so what? That's fine. You just got to keep working towards it and keep moving forward. There's no such thing as going backwards. You can't go back in time. Like, you just keep moving forward. So that's what success is to me. That's how I feel successful, is that I'm just working hard and I feel like I'm contributing. And at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, I'm pumped. Start thinking about the next day. That's a good day. That's a successful day.
That's such a fantastic answer, Max. You want to be my best friend?
Yeah, I'm down.
All right, cool, man. Thanks.
Where do you live? Are you in Chicago?
Phoenix.
You're in Phoenix? I've never been to Phoenix.
Oh, okay. Come on down, man. It's nice and warm over here.
I got to wait for this, for my vaccine.
Yeah.
but I'll come down for sure, man.
No, man. That, in all seriousness, no, that was such an awesome answer. I happen to feel the same way, especially when you talked about passions. And I think it's such an important message. So I want all the listeners out there to pause the show right here, rewind, or if you don't know what rewind means, because you're a Generation Z or something like that, then just back up. All right, back up. Listen to that again, because there's just a lot of wisdom in there. And
thanks, man.
No, I just appreciate it, Max. I appreciate your time on the show. Appreciate you sharing your life, your journey, your experience with me and my listeners. It was fantastic.
Cool, man. I love being here. Love chatting with you. Like I said last time on my show, that you ever want to sit down for a drink and just shoot the wind, talk books, whatever, I'm around. I like having friends.
Awesome, man. I'm going to take you up on that. All right. Thanks a lot, Max.